Hey everyone, I want to do a quick tutorial on how to do boat storage, which is the glitch that we use to skip all the lasers in any percent. Now, if you've seen an any percent run in the last month, you will have seen that we get on the boat and it just goes out of bounds and pulls us directly into the final room here. So boat storage itself is the glitch that we use to get the boat in a state where it'll do it for us. So the core of this glitch is that we need to get the boat to descend and with us standing on it. So when you summon the boat somewhere, the boat descends, it sinks from where it is and then rises back up in a different location. We need to get this boat here at Jungle to sink while we are standing in it. Now, the way that we do this is we start summoning the boat and then we immediately cancel it. And I'll show you up close how we achieve that. So I just saved my position at Jungle. I'm gonna go over here to Swamp. I'm going to summon the boat and then just teleport back to Jungle and solve the jungle summons. Now, as you see, the boat's still here, like the plank was rising and then it closed. But the boat's clearly in a very weird state. The floor is gone and the map is obscured. So what we would then do is the panel's actually still solvable even though the map is there. If you solve the boat at all, it just immediately remembers that it has to sink. And then we click into the boat again and it rises. So for some reason, if you are clicked into the boat map while it's sinking, when it rises up, there will be a line drawn on the map that is a straight line between where you were and where you are now. I mean, it's a glitch. The devs did not expect you to be standing on the boat when it was sinking. And so what we would do is, well, I actually kind of did it a little late, so it's not going to work perfectly, but we just solve that and the boat follows that path. And it's great. So the question is, we can't teleport using the trainer in an actual run. So how do we actually make this glitch happen? So the way that we actually pull this off during a run is through sniping. What we do is we go to the top of the mountain and back into this corner right here, and we turn our FOV up. And as you can see, both the swamp and jungle docks are visible at the same time. Now, this lets us do basically what we were doing with the trainer, where we can summon at swamp, quickly move our cursor over here, and then summon it at jungle without having to teleport, because we're just standing in one place and we can see both panels. This is pretty hard to do though, because these are pretty small panels and they're very far away. So what we have a lineup that allows us to do that. I'm going to talk more in detail about the lineup after I explain the trick, just because figuring out a lineup is basically the most important part of this trick, and it's going to be individual to you most likely. So couple things that are important to begin with. You have to be at high FOV, but not max FOV, and I'll explain why in a moment. I do mine at 117 FOV. And we back into this corner, and we look all the way down, and we line the jungle summons up against the right edge of the screen. The reason we do that is because once we solve the swamp summons, the plank starts rising on the boat over here. And once it finishes rising, the boat sinks and teleports over here. We don't want it to do that. We want the boat to stay right here. So we have to cancel that animation. And if we summon the boat at jungle before the plank finishes rising, then it'll cancel the animation, the plank will go back down, and it'll be in the state that we want it to be. And that animation takes 3.6 seconds. So we have a very small time frame to go from sniping swamp to sniping jungle. To assist with that, we line the summons up against the right edge of the screen, because then what we can do is we solve the swamp, we quickly move the mouse over here, and then we don't have to search left and right for the panel because we know that it is against the right edge of the screen. We only have to look up and down. Which would illustrate my point better if it was actually lined up. There we go. So let's just run through this once. I'm gonna click over here. The swamp summons, even with our lineup, there's not really a great indicator for it. I kind of just eyeball it. I'm like, it's like under this thing, and then I click around and I try to find it quickly. The other thing is that this buoy here, it bobs back and forth, and it can actually block the panel. So if you're having trouble clicking in or solving the panel over here, it might be because of the buoy. And that's just on a cycle. It'll change. So that might just mean you have to get there sooner or later. So I'm going to summon it over here. Okay, so important. When you summon at swamp, you have to double click because the game is going to say, oh, this is the first time you've solved this panel. I'm going to kick you out of solve mode. That's just what happens when you solve a panel for the first time, or you solve a set of panels for the first time. And that's dangerous because you want your camera angle to stay the way it is because of your lineup for the jungle summons. So you double click to immediately re-enter solve mode before you move your mouse anymore. And this is actually kind of good because it places your cursor in the center of the screen, which is closer to the right edge of the screen, which is where you want to go. Now I'm going to see if I can click in before that time frame expires. There we go. That's basically what you have to do within that time frame, is just click into it. Now you actually do have to pause once you click in, because since that panel is up against the right edge of the screen, the solution path is obscured. It's all off screen. If you recall, the way that panel is shaped is it kind of looks like a boat and it goes right and then around. Since the rest of that is off screen, you have to quickly pause, open this, and then change the FOV to be higher, because then that's going to reveal the rest of the panel once we exit the pause menu. One other thing to note is that you have to move your mouse down and right, and then hook around when you solve this panel. Usually when you're solving a boat summons, you could just move your mouse right and then up and then left. But because of the angle that this is at, that doesn't work. You actually have to go down and right. I've definitely seen that be a problem where you move your mouse right and it doesn't solve. So there we go. So if I go all the way down here, you'll see that the boat is in the state we want it to be. The door is open, we can go in, the floor is missing, the map is covered. So that is that is how you execute the trick, basically. You have your lineup, you figure out your lineup, you solve here, you double click so that you re-enter solve mode, quickly move to the right, you click into the summons, immediately open the pause menu, turn your FOV up, and then mouse right, down, and around, and click. And if it all worked well, then the boat will stay there. It won't sink and disappear. That is That's the tricky part when it comes to actual execution. That's the thing you have to do quickly. Now, there is still stuff that you have to do once you get on that boat. It's not smooth sailing from that point yet. However, before we get to that, I want to talk about the lineup. The lineup is very important because you have to do tutorial. You have to walk here, summon the boat at jungle, walk up the mountain, stand here, and then pretty quickly, like line up your camera angle such that you're in a thing that works over here, and then da 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 da. How's that gonna work? So I kind of showed a bit what my procedure is. Not really, because I was goofing around. The specific lineup is not going to be the same for everyone because of hardware differences, because of like aspect ratios, and just the graphics card stuff. So what I recommend, what my steps would be is, first of all, download Darkid's Trainer. I'll put a link in the description, but that program that I'm using, the Trainer, you need to download this. I would download that. I would turn on Show Entity Solvability, and that's going to show you these little dots that I am currently looking at. So do both of those things, then come up here to the top of the mountain. Well, solve the boat at jungle, and then come up here, top of the mountain, stand in this position, so back into this corner. Move the camera all the way down, because that gets you a consistent, like, up-down. It gets you a consistent camera step in the up and down, and I'll explain more of that later. But what I would do is, doing all those things, you're going to then try to find a way to get this little dot here to be exactly against the right edge of the screen. Now, you might not automatically be able to get that. You might be trying, and like the camera steps are too big, and it's either like close to the edge or just past it. So how do you get around that? We have a number of different tools for this. One of them is the FOV that I was talking about. There's a few different FOV. You can't do the max FOV because you need to be able to turn that up in the middle of the trick to reveal the rest of the panel. But you can explore a couple different, like 116 to 118. 116 is the minimum that works. If you go to 115, you won't be able to see both docks at the same time. So 116, 117, 118, you can try different FOVs and see if that will get you a way to have the dot at the edge of the screen. I do mine at 117. And something else that's important to note with the FOVs is that this is a floating point value. Like, look at all these different 105s. What I do to get a consistent one is I go all the way to the right, 120. I press right to make sure it's at the hard edge. Then I press left twice, and it gives me the consistent 117 that I use. The good thing is that you can do this before the timer starts. Like, you're in the tunnel, you do start new game, and then you do your settings and stuff. You can do that before the timer starts. It unfortunately does mean you have to do tutorial at a high FOV, but it's just something you can get used to. So yeah, FOV is one of the things you can experiment with. Another thing is your mouse 3D sensitivity. So I will tend to do these runs at -2 sensitivity. The thing with the mouse sensitivity that might be a little bit non-intuitive is that if you have a lower sensitivity, then the movements when you move your mouse, it's like more granular movements across the screen. So there's tiny little camera steps that you're able to achieve. And you would think, oh, that's great, because then I can just move my mouse around and find exactly when that dot is in the right place. Right? The problem with that is that works when you can see the dot. But you can't see the dot in the real run. So moving the mouse that granularly to find the lineup, it tends to make things trickier, I think. What I recommend is actually trying to see how high a 3D sensitivity you can get and still have a good and easy lineup. Because when the sensitivity is higher, moving the mouse, it steps the camera a bigger step. And so if you are able to find a lineup with a higher camera step, with a higher 3D sensitivity, then there aren't as many like options here, right? Like if you're thinking, oh, the edge of the screen should kind of look like this with that rock right there, you have maybe like, you know, like 2 or 3 different little positions here with the mouse that could be correct. Whereas if you have the lower sensitivity, then it's going to be way harder to find the correct step. I hope that makes sense. It's a little bit complicated to explain. Honestly, like the highest 3D sense that you can and still get the lineup is probably great. The only problem with that is that actually playing the rest of the game with a 3D sense that's too high is kind of unbearable. It makes my wrist hurt immediately. I would do it at -1, but it's kind of unbearable for me. So I do it at -2. Couple more things that you can use to try to get that dot on the edge of the screen. There's this panel right here, the Rever panel. If you enter solve mode while you're standing in front of it, it draws you in and it sets you to a specific camera angle and position. And that can help you find a consistent lineup. If you know, okay, I'm gonna get the camera angle from the Rever panel, I'm gonna step back over here and I'm gonna try again. I'm gonna try to find something that works. And that one works for me pretty much right away with my 117 FOV, -2 3D sense, and snapping into the Rever panel. But one other thing that's super useful, if you still can't get the dot to line up precisely, this can basically fix that problem every time, is the 360. So if you turn the camera all the way around in a 360, you are actually left with a different camera angle offset than you had before doing the 360. It's because the camera steps that you do they don't perfectly divide 360, so you end up with a little bit of an offset. So what you can do is, if you're standing here and the dot isn't on the exact edge of the screen, let me get one that actually doesn't work. I'm actually just making it better. Let's see if I do that. No, I'm getting a great angle every single time. Okay, yeah. If you see that, the dot is not quite on the right edge of the screen. So what you can do is you can turn the camera 360 to the left, and that'll bring it a little bit closer to the right. And now you can see it works. So I would suggest playing with all those things. Open up the trainer, go to this position, try different 3D sensitivities. Like I said, I think a little bit higher is better, so I do -2. I would try clicking to the Rever panel if maybe you can't find something that works without it. Always look straight down and like stay down, because then that means your lineup only depends on you looking left and right. It's good that we have that consistent straight down. And when all else fails, 360s. So what that means then is once you know a technique to get that dot lined up against the right edge of the screen, I suggest taking a photograph of your screen, like of your computer screen, like exit out of solve mode and then take a photograph. And then you can study that photograph and try to think about, okay, I can see like the specific way that the boat is intersecting with the edge of the screen, or I can see the foam next to that rock. That's the kind of stuff that you want to pay attention to. And then what you can do is, when you do a run, you're going from tutorial, summon at jungle, go up the mountain, and then you snap into river panel if you need to, if that was part of your thing. If it's not, then it's not. I mean, ideally, like during a top run, you would hopefully have a lineup that doesn't involve river, just because it spends time to go up to it and click into it. But if that's part of your lineup, go up and do that. Step into this corner all the way to the back, look straight down. You should already be on your correct FOV. Do any 360s that you need to, if you need to, and then carefully look over there and try to think about the photograph that you took, the visual lineup. And if you do that all right, you should be able to do it without the dots. So that's kind of the hardest thing I think about preparing for this run. The hardest thing is still probably the quick time event, where you have to solve that panel within 3.6 seconds. But preparing, this is definitely something that I can't tell you an exact thing to do. It really comes down to download the trainer and figure it out for yourself. And if you have trouble, you can find me in the Discord. I'd be happy to try to help. But yeah, this is really the strategy, and I hope those techniques work to help you find a lineup. Now, I did mention that this still isn't the end. Like, we're not in the clear yet once we have the boat set up like this. And so what we're gonna do is, like I was saying before, we just solve that the boat starts sinking. We click into the panel. We wait for the boat to rise. As soon as the map opens, we're going to solve. And it's gonna do this weird little thingy. And then the boat's gonna start going towards the pillar room. Now, this is a little bit tricky here, because there are a couple of ways you can get soft locked. There's that little section right here that is coming up. If you just stand still, you're going to get pushed off the boat and you're going to get stranded on those rocks. So you actually have to get off the boat yourself, walk around to the front over here, and get pushed back onto the boat. It takes a little bit of getting used to, I think. You might even want to do it at a slower boat speed. The top runners do it at speed 5, which is definitely very risky. Speed 4 is pretty safe. So that's that. The second thing is this wall over here. Again, if you just stand still, you're going to get pushed off the boat and you're going to be soft locked. So what you have to do is you have to go to the top left corner of the boat and hold forward. And then it should push you into the pillar room. If you get stuck, if you get soft locked, then that you can't really fix that. The next thing to do that's important is to stop the boat, which I did way too late. I'm gonna actually redo that, and I can actually show this off faster, and I can show it off with the boat in the correct position. So I do that instinctively, it doesn't matter. It's gonna kick me out, click that again. Pushed all the way up, the map opens, immediately solve that. Again, instinctively, I went to put it at speed 5, but I'm gonna keep it at speed 4, just as a demonstration. We're gonna wait, the boat's gonna go. Once we get past these first rocks, those rocks are totally fine. Then I'm gonna wait up here, kind of push against the left. Run past that. Get pushed back onto the boat, I go into the top left corner here, and I hold forward. Okay. And I'm going to stop the boat right around there. So, the next thing we have to do is we solve the left 4 pillars. This could be kind of tricky with the boat right here. You might even want to stop the boat a little bit later. Yeah, like sometimes, depending on where the boat is, solving the first pillar, you're gonna get blocked solving the first pillar. And that's very frustrating, but then the other pillars should be totally fine. They look very weird with the debug mode thing on. Now, once you solve this pillar, the elevator is going to start to rise. And you could just then solve the other set of pillars and wait for the elevator to rise fully and go into it like you would at the end of a normal run. But there's a second strat that we do to speed things up. So you solve this pillar, the elevator starts rising, then you tell the boat to go to town. Okay, I actually do this a second time because I messed it up the first time. But what you do is you redirect it to town. I turn the speed up, but this can also mean that you mess it up. The boat goes towards the elevator and it takes you with it. And what you're gonna wanna do is just run off the boat as it goes past the elevator. Like before the elevator rises fully, you can just kind of walk on. And that lets you open those doors pretty quickly. And then as the elevator rises, you close, you activate, you launch. And that's 0 lasers, any % with boat storage. I really hope that helped. I think this is a really cool strat, a cool trick, and a cool run. I know it's very difficult though, and anything I can do to help new runners get into it, happy to try.